Hey everyone, we're talking about how to stay safe and successful amid COVID. And this one's a big deal. I've got the CEO. Scott Daly here from Stahl, Sava Industries. And today we're talking about how to stay safe and successful during the pandemic. And this is a special one because I've got across from me the president and CEO of Stahl, Sava Industries, Chris Krasas. Welcome.
Hi, Scott. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And today we're going to be talking about, how a mid-market manufacturer has navigated this completely uncertain time. And I've got the good fortune of getting Chris's points of view while we do it. So again, welcome, Chris. I'm super excited to have you. Let's just talk a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your background, and then we'll dive in. So you're a certified public accountant. You came to Sava in 2015 as the company's CFO. Prior to Sava, you've managed workforces as large as 1,100 people, companies ranging from 40 million in revenue all the way up to 4 billion in revenue. You're an award-winning CFO. I know you're a modest guy, but that's kind of a cool deal. And you became president and CEO of Sava in March of 19. Less than a year later, you faced the biggest global health crisis the world has seen since the flu pandemic of 1918. So I guess the only question I have for you is, I bet you're sleeping well these days?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So how you doing?
I'm doing good. I mean, the company is really driving forward in terms of the sales and growth initiatives that we have, the operational excellence things that we're working on, the initiatives are really moving forward, and on the people side and developing people. And really, going from the CFO role to the CEO role, the CFO role, much more left brain, on the left side of the brain, analytical, organizing goals and objectives to resources, managing risk. And that was really the transition for me, is to go to the right side of the brain on the CEO side, where you're really worrying about social leadership and how do you inspire and how do you motivate people. Right. You worry about strategy. As a child, I loved the game of Stratego.
Great board
And,
game.
On the CFO side, I liked Monopoly too, but I really enjoy this role. I think in terms of my background, my unique abilities.
Did you ever lose at Monopoly, by the way? I'm just curious.
A couple of times, yeah.
Yeah, you don't like to talk about those. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, just in terms of my natural, unique abilities, I think this is a really an opportunity to grow and to grow the company. And so I'm really excited about it.
And you mentioned people right away. And so my question early in our chat is, everybody safe?
Yes. I mean, right now we've had no known COVID cases. We are approaching, middle of fall, going into the winter, and so there's always concern. But I really attribute that to the environment that was pre-COVID to the environment that was during COVID. We created a safe space for our employees. A lot of it has to do with our employees, and it also has to do with our management team and the way we communicated and the way we handle things.
And when did you... Understanding that this is unprecedented, right? It's hard to forecast anything. When did you realize that this was a horse of a different color? Like this isn't common cold here.
We started initially getting supply chain letters requesting how we could commit to various orders. And that continued in volume. When did they come, those that was in the middle of February. And, there's a lot of different data points that were out there. But they started to, increase in volume. And at the same time, I had a very close friend who I've known since 6 years old, medical doctor, began to ping him and began to really raise some red flags for me, as well as some family members on the front lines. And so... the date for us was February 26th. We had a monthly quality meeting.
That comprises the entire workforce? The
entire workforce, 3 different sessions, and this was a late ad to talk about COVID. And we talked about personal hygiene, about getting ready. We talked about having masks on order, which honestly, those masks really never came. And I'm staring around, looking at the room and seeing the images of our people. With some concern, but also what exactly is going on? What is he talking about? And post-meeting, and fast forward a few weeks later, people came to me and said to me, "Wow, that was interesting to have it at that time because it was very early." I point to that night, driving home, getting a national update as to where we were, and on that day, it's ironic. That day,
The same day
same
that
day,
you did the same thing.
we were going from 15 people potentially down to 0.
Right.
And I'm in my driveway, pulling into the driveway there, and what have I just done in terms of the communications that I just had there? And so we try to be conservative. I think the lesson, CEO-wise, is there's an internal compass.
Sure.
And you're going to have to trust based on all of the different data points to make those decisions and to have those communications. And that proved to be very, very important to us, those initial conversations.
Sure. So there you are in your driveway. The president is addressing the country in much the same way you addressed our workforce. Where'd you go first? I mean, you're walking into your home. You must have been immediately strategizing, prioritizing. What do I do first, second, third? So where did you go first? Where did you begin to create this sort of grocery list of things that must be handled?
Initially, what we did is we decided that we were going to up our inventory levels. We were going to raise them even if our customers did not ask. We knew we're specialists. We knew where we have lead time issues and bottlenecks.
So even if they didn't send letters, you were anticipating their need here at the office.
Absolutely. Okay. And that was it's just how things progressed for us. From there, workplace safety was just a huge issue overall. But we were managing transmission. We were managing and making sure that didn't come into the workplace.
Sure, yeah.
We were managing workplace safety. We were managing the business and how our business was changing, and that was challenging as well. And then we were managing our inventory in all these different areas, and it was a struggle. It was a challenge, but it's something that I look back at and I'm happy things the way they worked out.
And I assume, because of the unprecedented nature of this crisis we're in, that you were course correcting probably early and often. So how did your process evolve? Were there any early stumbles that you had to kind of, again, get back on the track?
I attribute, again, from the CEO perspective, from the leadership perspective, really a lot of this was learning agility, the bringing together. Again, my background of 30 years working across multiple industries, doing a lot of problem solving in competitive industries, and bringing together all those points and testing them against the unknown. And that's the environment that we were in.
Yeah.
So I think learning agility was a huge thing. So how does that impact in terms of what we're talking about? I had to reach out almost on a daily basis, sometimes on an hourly basis, with a lot of different resources. For example, New Jersey Manufacturing Extension Program was a huge advocate early to help guide us with various FAQs and things we were working on. I would call it FAQ bonanza in a sense of all of the questions that were coming, and you had to learn quickly, and you had to respond quickly. And speed is a thing in the company that we're really, really trying to work on.
Sure.
So we're living it through this crisis. NJBIA was very helpful. We also had CFO Studio, who was helpful. Webinars daily, different experts coming in on how to handle various issues, because the list of issues was just incredible.
It was unending.
But that learning agility, I think, was really the beginning of our success in how to deal with this crisis.
And when you met with these resources, these advocacy groups, these trade associations, how regularly were you meeting with them?
Almost daily. We would wait for updates on a daily basis.
Right.
Sifting through information. Sometimes the information was changing as
So you
well.
were sort of a round table every single day, getting together and breaking bread and figuring things out.
And working with our business partners, our long-term business partners was also key.
And where were you most nimble? Where did you just nail it right away?
I think in general, it was about staying one step ahead. And I think that really was
so
one of the
thematically
keys.
speaking, you knew that forgetting about the practical minutia, you needed to have that attitude of staying one step.
You had to have an edge at the end of the day. And I'll give you an example. We had a theater company that was creating masks and asked us for a wire for the mask.
Right.
We created a prototype. Within a day, we turned it around. We produced thousands of these this wire for this mask, sent it out, no charge. Just like so many volunteers.
Just an act of benevolence.
Yeah, and that was happening across the world.
Right.
And as well, we were in terms of hand sanitization and PPE, overall in the things that we needed, we had to be resourceful. And again, staying one step ahead and being resourceful. And the example there was, I had looked on LinkedIn and saw there was a company that was down south that would show pallets of cleaning solution and protective gloves and sanitization. And I reached out, and it was it had to be done quickly with speed. And how that comes together is we had an executive order.
Was it an advertisement, or was just this company mentioning that they had
mentioning?
So it wasn't even an ad. It was just in your feed, your LinkedIn feed.
Yeah, and to bring that all together in terms of staying ahead, there was an executive order where, and in manufacturing in New Jersey, we were essential, and so it was on a Monday where we were changing regulation on masks, on hand sanitization, having it available, and we had some. But not to the quantity that we really wanted. And wouldn't you know that Monday morning that we were coming to work, the theater company that we had donated our resources to had sent us back masks available that day, and we received a pallet of various cleaning solutions and hand sanitizer that morning from the company from LinkedIn. And that is really the lesson here, is to be resourceful.
Ad hoc collaboration is just happening.
Yeah, and to stay ahead.
And did you, obviously we talked about, it's funny, but the beginning of our conversation when you mentioned the left brain, right brain, parts of you and how you're summoning this new side of you as compared with 30 years on the other side, it made me think immediately, a lot of what you're doing is prognosticating. You have to imagine what might happen or what's most likely to happen next, because again, this is utterly unprecedented. There's nothing to compare this to. You have to be 102 years old to have been a newborn when this happened last. So my question for you is, thinking of right brain, left brain, did the process, come to you quickly to prioritize things, or because not only are you prioritizing, the speed with which you have to make choices is was probably unnatural given the circumstance. So did that come to you quickly or slowly? Can you talk a little bit about that?
We just had to work day by day through various issues. The area that was of concern for us really was on the people side. On the human piece, the social isolation piece, that was an area that we really had to pay attention to. We had employees that obviously were taking care of the elderly. They were taking care of their families. They were taking care of students at home and learning. And so that piece of it is something that we really had to pay attention to. And we're really thankful for the way things turned out.
And where was the guessing off? And we were spending a good bit of time talking about how just how you responded to circumstance. Where did you respond where maybe your guessing was off a little bit?
Again, on the people side, it's so many different situations, Scott, that we had to deal with at the time. So
we're kind of been dancing around the prospect of adversity a little bit. I think of adversity as sort of the catalyst for change, growth, improvement, self-improvement, improvement within organizations. I don't think, personally, I never really believe that a lot of change comes when things are going great. I think change comes when things are kind of tough. So talk to me a little bit about how innovation emerged in the company with you, with the leadership team, even with our personnel, as this crisis started to take shape.
Sure. I mean, I think that the companies that are going to survive are the ones that can act, that are agile and can move quickly through situations. And the best example I can give of that in this crisis was what came across my desk was a New Jersey NJBIA program for a healthy certified site.
Okay.
And it's been recently acknowledged that we were one of the first 50 companies in New Jersey. Honestly, I think we were in the first wave of that.
To receive that certification.
Yeah, and again, that's about acting quickly and importantly. We wanted to know, were the things that we were doing,
right,
the right things. And again, they had been changing so often,
Yeah, sure.
and so we really needed to act quickly.
So the certification for you is a yardstick to help you determine how effective and how responsible you're being in managing this workplace during a crisis.
Yeah, and the thing for us always was that when an employee would come through these doors, that this was a safe environment, an environment perhaps even better than the home, better than being in the public, and that there was an environment where we could focus and get the job done. We never missed a day here throughout this crisis, and it has a lot to do with the fact that, again, I'm back to our employees. Our employees cared, our management team cared, and we cared about what we were doing with our customers.
And where did Sava just do fine, as though we were sort of COVID proof? Where were there certain areas where we just kind of nailed it from the moment it began?
On the customer side, anticipating what the customer needed and keeping our operations up the entire way, that was a feat. It was a feat, and my legacy, again, just taking on the role.
Sure.
Throughout this crisis, I've always felt that I had to keep our employees safe. And it had a lot to do with our management team, walking the floor, asking questions, responding quickly. There's so many different unique situations. But that ultimately our legacy through that time period. Now, things have changed, obviously. There's a much better response at this phase of what to do. Yeah. We're talking about a time when there really were no answers in many cases. And so communication was key.
And if you could go backwards and tell pre-COVID Chris what post-COVID Chris now knows, and post is unfair to say, right? We're still in the middle of this thing. It's going to last a whole lot longer. But if you had an opportunity to go back to your former your pre-COVID self, what advice would you give that Chris?
Communication above all is going to be critical. I mean, I've done public speaking. Sure. I've communicated throughout my career in a variety of industries, being on panels. This was of a completely different nature.
Right.
And what triggers in my mind is a very early April company-wide conference call that we did. We had employees working from home. Yeah. We had the production here on the floor, and we did this conference call. And it was about moving from fear to hope. It was about a culmination of just so many different data points. Again, addressing FAQs from stimulus to benefits to how we would handle them. I remember vividly one of the key questions that I asked the group and the organization was, "What would you do if you got it?" And that's really,
a very serious question.
And that really triggered, I believe, part of the reason why we're successful in terms of prevention, because I was challenging the group. What would you do? And our message was to be brave, to have a place to come to work, to be smart about what we were doing, and that meeting, Scott. That meeting brought me to my knees at the conclusion of it. It had been a culmination of
you literally got off the call and were on your knees.
Yeah, because it was the discussion about how we were a family, right. And it was a discussion about how we were going to make it through this and through this crisis. I know that the things that we want to do, we talked about at the beginning of this presentation in terms of driving growth, in terms of developing people, in terms of being, just operationally just an excellent company. Having gone through this crisis, I believe we will, and we will meet the needs of our customers, we'll meet the needs of our owners, and we're going to meet the needs of our employees.
And great conversation. We're just about done. I have one more question for you. Actually, it's sort of a two-parter. First one is, if you were doing that public speaking you've said you've done many times throughout your career, and you put a deck up on a screen, there you're on a stage and it's behind you, what would the title of that deck be if it was about teaching other CEOs to be prepared for this pandemic? What would the title of that presentation be?
What immediately comes to mind is Communications in Chaos. This really was an exercise in transparent communications with courage, and just direct. And I believe that CEOs all over the world and leaders all over the world really had to test their ability to get to the heart of the matter here. Again, financial issues. health issues, transmission, keeping your business going. And that's at an unprecedented level, and that it was going to be communications.
And lastly,
Sure.
what are you grateful for? And here you are. Let me qualify the question a bit. Here you are, 6-7 months into this thing. Who knows how many more months we've got of it? Whether or not it's going to ebb and flow, we don't know. What are you grateful for right now, being 7 months into this thing, 8 months into this thing?
When I walk through the factory, when I talk with our management team, I'm ultimately grateful for the people that we have here. You can't win a golf match with one club, and I've had to through this crisis. This isn't a one-man show.
Right.
It really was about delegating to an experienced team, to experienced employees. And so I'm grateful for the owners that we have. That again, they were going through this issue as well.
The whole world is,
And just working off of no playbook to execute the way we did. I'm grateful for that.
Chris, great conversation. I'm really delighted that we got to do this with the CEO of the company. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you like this content, if you enjoyed the conversation, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you have a topic you want us to address, mention that in the comments too, and we'll create an episode out of it. You can find us all over social, and we'd love to hear from you on those platforms as well. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.